cousins has got 11 children.
Jeez.
Yep.
You don't see that very often.
No, you don't. They're good Catholic girls, I think. But, she's got 11 children, and her sister, my other cousin, is a nun.
Okay.
So it's almost like I'm wondering if one's making up for the other.
Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Caris May, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Mick Mumford. We warmly welcome the family of Private Frederick Benjamin Green, whose story will be read shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors. To commence this evening's ceremony, I invite you all stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations for over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Frederick Green. Frederick Benjamin Green was born in 1892, one of 9 children of Henry and Harriet Green of North Sydney. After attending Neutral Bay Public School, Frederick worked as an apprentice plumber for the Sydney Harbour Trust. In the years before the war, he was an active member of the militia and paraded part-time as a sergeant with D Company, St George's English Rifle Regiment in the nearby suburb of Chatswood. Green enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in November 1914 and after training at Liverpool Camp, left Australia with a reinforcement group for the 13th Battalion in February 1915. By the time he arrived at Egypt, Australian and New Zealand troops were preparing to make an amphibious landing on the Gallipoli Peninsula as part of the wider British effort to force a passage through the Dardanelles. Green landed on Gallipoli with the 13th Battalion at 3:30 a.m. on the morning of the 26th of April 1915, coming ashore under fire at Anzac Cove and pushing inland to Pope's Hill at the head of Monash Valley. From here, the 13th Battalion participated in the confused fighting in the thick scrub and rugged terrain for the next few days as Australian and New Zealand forces failed to secure their objective of Third Ridge against mounting Turkish resistance. In the weeks after the landing, the 13th Battalion continued to defend the area around Pope's Hill and nearby position of Quinn's Post. When the battalion was relieved in mid-May, Frederick was evacuated to Egypt, where he was admitted to the 1st Australian General Hospital at Hellouin, suffering from what was later diagnosed as influenza. After a month of rest and recovery, he returned to the Peninsula in June and rejoined the battalion in Reserve Gully as the men spent the following weeks digging trenches and tunnels, terracing gullies and unloading barges at Anzac Cove. In August, the Australian and New Zealand troops fighting on Gallipoli were drawn into a major British offensive that endeavoured to break out of the stalemate that presided over the Gallipoli Peninsula. On the 7th of August 1915, a number of simultaneous attacks were made at Anzac, with the main effort being made by Australian troops of the 4th Brigade in the foothills of Hill 971, while the New Zealanders assaulted the feature known as Chunuk Bair further to the north. After an arduous night's march, the men of the 13th Battalion were engaged by Turkish troops who fired rifles and machine guns into the 4th Brigade as it made its attack on Hill 971. The Turks made repeated counterattacks over the following days in an effort to eject the Australians from the foothills, inflicting a heavy toll. Frederick Green was mortally wounded in the fighting for Hill 971. He was evacuated by stretcher to the 39th Field Ambulance dressing station, where he died the following day. Aged just 23 at the time of his death, Green was buried at the 7th Field Ambulance Cemetery north of Anzac Cove. His name is listed on the honour roll on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frederick Benjamin Green, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Could you all please stand for the ode and last post?
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We would like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.